Welcome to your deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're going deep into the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali.
Really deep.
Yeah. And we're lucky enough to have a lecture and a Q&A with Professor Edwin Bryant to help guide it through all this.
Yeah, his work is fantastic.
Yeah. So you might have, seen the Yoga Sutras, maybe even have a copy on your shelf.
Yeah.
But I think we can all agree that these ancient texts can be a little bit dense.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that's where we come in. We're like your translators.
Yeah, think of us like your Sherpas.
Right. Your yoga wisdom Sherpas.
Exactly. We're going to be pulling out those key takeaways, the aha moments, and we're even going to dig into some really surprising stuff about the history of yoga and how it traveled through time and ended up in your life.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. Let's start with why were the Yoga Sutras even written in the first place?
Yeah.
It wasn't just, Patanjali wanting to share his yoga flow or anything like that.
No, not exactly. Imagine ancient India with all that knowledge being passed down orally generation after generation.
Wow, yeah. And now imagine, adding in this belief that they were moving into this Kali Yuga, which is this, astrological age of decline where knowledge is easily lost.
Oh, wow.
And then on top of that, you've got the rise of Buddhism,
Oh, yeah.
which was actually challenging some core Hindu beliefs.
So it's kind of like quick, write everything down before it all disappears.
Yeah, exactly. The sutra texts, these became like this really vital way to preserve and to condense all of these complex teachings,
Oh, okay.
almost like ancient flash drives for wisdom.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so flash drives for wisdom. That makes sense.
Right.
But let's talk about Patanjali himself for a minute.
Okay.
Is it just me, or is he kind of a mysterious figure?
He is a bit of a mystery, isn't he?
Yeah.
Historically speaking, we don't really know a lot about him.
Right.
But centuries later, there's this verse that links Patanjali not just to yoga, but to grammar and Ayurveda, and even an incarnation of Vishnu. Hold on, are we talking about one super genius here, or are we talking about multiple Patanjalis throughout history?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's one that scholars are still debating to this day.
Okay.
But what we do have are his Yoga Sutras,
Right.
and they're anything but straightforward.
Okay.
These texts are incredibly concise, almost like these coded messages.
I'm picturing those old spy movies where they have to decipher the secret codes?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
really not a bad analogy. The sutras, they were designed to be memorized,
Okay.
hence the brevity.
Right.
But to really grasp their meaning, we need those commentaries.
So it's like having the treasure map, but nobody told you what all the symbols mean.
Exactly. And Vyasa's commentary is considered to be the gold standard.
Okay.
So that's our official decoder ring.
I like it.
And then over time, this whole lineage of commentators emerged, and each one of them added their own kind of interpretations and layers of understanding.
Oh, wow. So building upon it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so we've got our cryptic text. We've got our team of decoders.
Yep.
Now let's get to the heart of it. What is yoga, according to Patanjali?
Okay.
And I have a feeling it's more than just downward dog and fancy leggings.
You are absolutely right about that.
Okay.
Patanjali's definition is really deceptively simple, but it's profoundly deep.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
So he says yoga is the complete stilling of all mental fluctuations, or, as they say in Sanskrit, chitta vritti nirodha.
Okay. That sounds pretty zen.
It does.
But I'm going to be honest with you, stilling the mind. What does that even look like? And what happens after the mind is still...
Okay.
Is that the goal?
That is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
So Patanjali doesn't just stop there. He goes on to say, then the seer abides in its own nature, or in Sanskrit, tanadran svarupe avastanam.
Whoa, hold on a second. Now we're talking about a seer.
We are.
Who or what is that, and why do we care if it's abiding in its own nature or not?
So this is where I think we move beyond just calming the mind and into some really profound territory.
Okay.
So the seer, in Patanjali's view, is your true self,
Okay.
pure consciousness,
Oh, wow.
the essence of who you are beyond all of your thoughts, emotions, and experiences.
So it's not just about achieving a quiet mind,
Right.
but it's about accessing something much deeper
Exactly.
within ourselves.
Yeah.
But why is that so important?
Well, Patanjali believed that when our consciousness is constantly being pulled outward, by our senses, by our desires, by our anxieties, we become entangled in suffering.
Okay.
And so yoga, in its truest sense, is about disentangling ourselves from that suffering by recognizing and abiding in our true nature.
So it's about finding liberation from the roller coaster of our thoughts and emotions?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
I can get down with that.
Yeah.
But is Patanjali suggesting we should just completely detach from the world? Like become hermits meditating on a mountaintop?
Well, that's a great question, and one that we'll explore more deeply as we continue our deep dive.
All right, I'm ready when you were...
Okay, let's do it.
So we're talking about this liberation, but not necessarily escaping from the world.
Right.
I'm sensing kind of a paradox here.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
The Yoga Sutras aren't about, like, denying life,
Right.
but rather transforming our relationship to it.
Okay.
It's about experiencing this deeper, more lasting happiness.
Okay.
That's not dependent on, like, external circumstances.
So it's not about like, ignoring our problems or pretending that, everything is sunshine and rainbows, but it's about finding a different way to experience those problems.
Exactly. And it's interesting to compare this with Krishna's teachings in the Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, yeah.
Where the focus is really on acting in the world, but detaching from the results of our actions.
Yeah.
Different approaches, but both aimed at, like, freeing ourselves from suffering.
Right. Okay, so maybe no mountaintop hermitage required.
Right.
But how do we actually get there?
Yeah.
I mean, Patanjali is famous for his 8 limbs of yoga.
Yeah.
Is that the roadmap?
The 8 limbs are definitely a key part of the journey. Okay.
But think of them as like a step-by-step process, not a quick fix.
Okay.
And remember, Patanjali wasn't just interested in, physical flexibility.
Right.
The 8 limbs address ethical living, self-discipline, breath control,
Okay.
and ultimately those deeper states of meditation and absorption.
But let's be honest, some of those limbs, like the yamas and the niyamas,
Yeah.
those ethical guidelines,
Right.
I mean, they can feel pretty intense in today's world.
Yeah.
Like, is Patanjali expecting us to be saints?
Well, he does talk about ahimsa,
Right.
non-harming, as like a foundational principle.
Okay.
But it's not about being perfect,
Right.
It's about cultivating this awareness of how our actions, words, and even thoughts impact ourselves and others.
Okay, so it's like this continuous practice of trying to align our actions with our values, even if we don't always get it right.
Exactly. And this brings us to something that might surprise you.
Okay.
Patanjali's discussion of the siddhis.
What are those?
Those are like the mystic powers that we often hear about. Hold on, you're telling me that the Yoga Sutras talk about superpowers,
Yeah.
like levitation and telekinesis and all that stuff?
Yeah. Signed up.
Well, Patanjali describes all these extraordinary abilities.
Okay.
Things like, knowing the past and the future,
Wow.
invisibility, even defying gravity.
Okay, that's officially blowing my mind.
It is pretty wild.
But why would a text that's focused on stilling the mind and finding liberation include these seemingly out there powers?
Right.
Is he suggesting that we should all become X-Men?
Well, here's the twist.
Okay.
Patanjali saw these powers as potential distractions.
Okay.
He acknowledged their existence,
Right.
maybe because they were commonly associated with yogis at the time.
Oh, okay.
But his main message is clear. Chasing after these powers can sidetrack you from the true goal of yoga.
So it's like, yeah, superpowers might be cool,
Right.
but don't get lost in the spectacle. Focus on the inner transformation.
Exactly.
Okay, I can dig that.
Yeah.
But speaking of distractions, let's talk about food.
Is there like a specific yogic diet? Can I still enjoy my morning coffee and be like a true yogi?
Now you're getting into the heart of modern day yoga debates.
Am I?
You are. So let's be clear.
Okay.
The Hindu tradition, as it's reflected in the Yoga Sutras, is vegetarian.
Okay.
And Patanjali doesn't really mince words on this.
Okay.
No exceptions based on your caste or where you live or even the time period.
Okay, so no bacon cheeseburgers on the path to enlightenment.
Probably not.
Okay. But is it purely about compassion for animals, or is there like another layer to it?
Well, compassion is a key factor, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, if you truly see the self in all beings, why would you want to cause them harm?
Right.
But there's also this idea that consuming meat can cultivate tamas,
Oh, okay.
which is this kind of mental dullness
Right.
that hinders spiritual progress.
So it's like you are what you eat, but on a spiritual level.
Exactly. Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, but this raises another question for me.
Yeah.
How does Patanjali's yoga differ from Buddhism? I mean, they both seem to emphasize meditation and mindfulness, right?
They do. That's a question that really deserves its own deep dive.
Okay.
But the core difference lies in their understanding of the self and the ultimate goal.
Okay.
So Buddhism, unlike the yogic tradition, rejects the idea of an eternal, unchanging self, the Atman.
So for Buddhists, there's no seer abiding in its own nature.
Right.
What are they aiming for then?
Well, Buddhism emphasizes the impermanence of all things, including consciousness.
Okay.
And the goal is liberation from suffering by recognizing this impermanence and detaching from clinging to this false sense of self.
Okay, so if there's no permanent self,
Right.
What's this nirvana that Buddhists talk about? Is
Yeah.
it just ceasing to exist?
Nirvana is not about annihilation.
Okay.
It's about awakening to a way of being that's free from the illusion of a separate self, free from clinging and craving. It's a really profound shift in perspective in how you experience reality itself.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these two paths diverge. But how does all of this ancient wisdom about consciousness relate to what we're learning about the brain through neuroscience?
That's a question that continues to spark debate.
Does it?
It does. So the dominant scientific view
Okay.
is that consciousness is a product of the brain,
Okay.
that it's a result of complex neural activity.
Okay.
But some scientists, like David Chalmers, propose this hard problem of consciousness.
Okay.
They say that explaining a subjective experience through objective material processes,
Yeah.
well, it's not so simple.
So science can map the brain, but explaining how those physical processes create subjective experience,
Right.
that's a whole other ballgame.
That is a whole other ballgame. And this is where things get really intriguing. Because
Yeah.
the Yoga Sutras and really Eastern philosophies in general offer a very different lens
Okay.
for understanding consciousness.
Okay.
One that doesn't necessarily reduce it to just brain activity.
So you're saying that ancient wisdom might actually have something to offer modern science, even when it comes to something as complex as consciousness.
I am.
That's pretty wild.
It is pretty wild. It's a reminder that we might need to expand our current scientific models
Okay.
to fully grasp the mystery of consciousness.
That makes sense.
But let's bring this back to like practical matters.
Okay.
We've talked about the big picture, but how can we actually apply the teachings of the Yoga Sutras in our everyday lives?
Right, because most of us aren't, living in ashrams, dedicating our lives solely to spiritual practice.
Right.
I mean, we've got jobs, we've got families, we've got bills to pay,
Right.
we've got social media to scroll.
Exactly.
The list goes on and on.
Totally.
So how do we bridge that gap between ancient wisdom and modern life?
So that's where the 8 limbs come in, because
Okay.
they offer this framework for integrating yogic principles into our daily routines,
Okay.
even amidst all the chaos.
Okay.
And it really starts with the yamas and the niyamas, those
Okay.
ethical guidelines that we touched on earlier.
Okay, so instead of aiming for sainthood,
Right.
we can focus on, say, practicing satya, truthfulness in our communication, or a stay at non-stealing, but in a broader sense, like not stealing other people's time or energy.
Exactly. It's about bringing that awareness into our interactions, our work, even our online behavior.
Right.
And then we have asana.
Ah, yes, the downward dogs and warrior poses.
Exactly, those physical postures, which most people associate with yoga today.
Yeah.
But for Patanjali, asana wasn't just about fitness.
Okay.
It was about preparing the body
Okay.
for these deeper practices,
Okay.
cultivating the sense of steadiness and grounding that we can then apply to the mind.
So it's like laying the foundation for the inner work.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Okay, but let's be real. A lot of us struggle with even finding the time for a basic yoga class.
Right.
So how can we realistically incorporate those other limbs like pranayama, breath control,
Yeah.
into our busy lives?
Well, you'd be surprised at how even just a few minutes of conscious breathing can really shift your state of being.
I mean, you can practice pranayama at your desk on the train, even waiting in line at the grocery store.
All right, I like that. Doable.
Yeah.
Okay, what about those like higher limbs, like pratyahara, withdrawing the senses, and dharana, concentration?
Yeah.
Are those even possible in our hyperstimulated world?
They might be more challenging,
Yeah.
but they're absolutely possible.
Okay.
Think of pratyahara as consciously choosing where you direct your attention.
Oh.
So turning off notifications,
Okay.
putting down your phone,
Okay.
even just taking a few minutes to just be present with nature. These are all ways to practice withdrawing the senses.
So it's about creating those pockets of stillness even in the midst of all the noise.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. And dharana. That just sounds like a tall order for someone with a mile-long to-do list.
It can feel that way, but really dharana is about training the mind to focus.
Okay.
It can be as simple as choosing a single task and just giving it your full attention for a set period of time.
So it's like building those mental muscles one focused task at a time.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. But this all sounds like a lot of work.
It can be.
What motivates us to keep going, especially when, like, the going gets tough?
Yeah.
Does Patanjali offer any words of encouragement?
He does. He talks about abhyasa,
Oh.
consistent practice,
Okay.
and vairagya,
What's that?
Non-attachment.
Okay, wait a minute. Is Viraja about, like, becoming a detached, emotionless robot?
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
It's about cultivating a healthy detachment from the outcomes of our actions.
Oh.
So we do the work, we make the effort,
Right.
but we release the need to control the results.
So it's about letting go of expectations and surrendering to the flow of life.
Exactly.
That's a powerful concept, especially in a world where we're constantly striving for achievement and validation.
It is. And this brings us back to something you mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah.
The concept of Ishvara in the Yoga Sutras.
Right. We were going to talk about that, this special consciousness that can guide us towards liberation. What exactly is Ishvara? And how does it fit into this whole picture?
So Ishvara is a really complex concept.
Okay.
And it has all these different interpretations within the yogic tradition.
Okay.
Some people see it as a personal god,
Okay.
while others view it as like this universal principle or this cosmic consciousness.
So it's like tapping into a source of wisdom and guidance that's beyond our individual minds.
Exactly. And Patanjali suggests that by connecting with Ishvara,
Yeah.
we can transcend our limited ego and move towards a state of greater clarity and freedom.
Okay. That sounds amazing. But how do we actually connect with this Ishvara?
Right.
Is it through like rituals or chanting or special ceremonies?
So Patanjali recommends a variety of different practices,
Okay.
but perhaps the most important element is cultivating the sense of surrender,
Okay.
a willingness to let go of our need to control
Right.
and to open ourselves up to something greater than ourselves.
So it's about humility and openness,
Yeah,
maybe even a sense of faith or trust in something beyond our comprehension.
precisely. And this doesn't necessarily require specific rituals or beliefs.
Okay.
It can be as simple as cultivating gratitude for the present moment,
Okay.
practicing kindness and compassion towards others,
Yeah.
or simply acknowledging that we don't have all the answers.
I can see how that could be a powerful antidote to like the ego-driven striving that often dominates our lives.
It really can.
But let's address the elephant in the room.
Okay. Yeah.
These days, there's a lot of talk about cultural appropriation
Yeah.
when it comes to yoga.
Right.
So how do we navigate that complex terrain?
It is a very crucial conversation.
Yeah.
On one hand, we have to acknowledge yoga's roots in ancient India.
Yeah.
Its philosophical depth and its cultural significance. We can't just strip it of its context and claim it as our own.
So it's about recognizing that we're participating in a tradition
Yeah.
with a long history and lineage
Exactly.
and not just a trendy workout.
Right. But we also have to acknowledge that yoga has evolved over centuries.
Right.
Adapting to different cultures and contexts. Okay.
I mean, it's not like this static artifact locked in a museum.
So it's both ancient and evolving.
Yeah,
Rooted in tradition, but also open to transformation.
precisely. The key is approaching it with respect, humility, and a willingness to learn.
I like that.
Yeah, we educate ourselves about its origins.
Okay.
We listen to the voices of diverse practitioners,
Yeah.
and we support teachers that come from authentic lineages.
So it's about mindful participation, not just mindless consumption.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. But let's get back to those siddhis for a moment.
Okay.
Those intriguing powers.
Right.
You mentioned that Patanjali saw them as distractions.
Yeah.
But are they just myths, or is there a possibility that some of these abilities are actually real?
That is a question that has fascinated people for centuries.
It has.
And honestly, there's no easy answer. I mean, there have been cases of fraud, of course.
Okay.
People using trickery
Right.
to create these illusions of power.
Like those stage magicians that make you believe that they can saw a person in half. Exactly. But there are also countless accounts throughout history of individuals exhibiting abilities that really defy conventional explanation.
Really?
They do. And many spiritual traditions, not just yoga, acknowledge the potential for these extraordinary capacities to develop as consciousness evolves.
So we can be skeptical without shutting down the possibility that there might be more to reality than we currently understand.
Precisely. I think it's about holding both skepticism and open-mindedness.
Yeah.
That sense of wonder and curiosity that fuels true exploration.
That's a great point. Speaking of exploration, the Yoga Sutras place a lot of emphasis on this guru-disciple relationship.
They do.
So what's the role of the teacher in this path, and how do we find a genuine guide in a world full of self-proclaimed gurus?
That is such an important question.
It is.
In the yogic tradition, the guru is seen as like this vital guide.
Okay.
Not just someone that imparts information, but someone who helps you to see yourself more clearly.
So it's less about like learning techniques and more about developing that inner awareness.
Yeah, exactly. A true guru helps you to confront your blind spots, to challenge your limitations, and to navigate the subtle complexities of the path.
But how do we know who to trust?
Right.
There seem to be so many spiritual teachers out there.
I know.
Some more credible than others?
Yeah, discernment is key.
Okay.
Be wary of anyone who demands unquestioning obedience, who fosters this kind of cult-like atmosphere, or who seems overly focused on material wealth or personal gain.
Okay.
A true guru embodies humility, compassion, and this genuine desire to help others awaken to their true nature.
So it's about looking beyond the charisma and the claims and really paying attention to the teacher's character and motivations.
Exactly. And trust your intuition.
Yep.
If something feels off, it probably is.
Yeah.
The right teacher will appear when the student is ready.
Okay, but what about those who don't have access to a qualified teacher?
Right.
Can we still benefit from the Yoga Sutras on our own?
Absolutely. While a guru can provide invaluable guidance,
Yeah.
the sutras themselves are a really profound source of wisdom. There are many excellent translations and commentaries available,
Okay.
as well as online communities where people can connect and support each other.
Okay.
The key is to approach the teachings with an open mind, a willingness to learn, and a commitment to practice.
So it's about taking ownership of our own journey, even if we don't have a physical teacher by our side.
Exactly. The path to liberation is available to everyone, regardless of our circumstances.
I love that.
Yeah. And it's fascinating to consider how these ancient teachings written centuries ago can speak to the challenges that we face in today's world.
Right.
I mean, we live in a time of immense change and upheaval.
Yeah, we do.
So how can the Yoga Sutras help us to navigate these turbulent waters?
That's a question that's probably on a lot of our minds.
I think it is.
What wisdom can these ancient texts offer in the face of modern-day anxieties, uncertainties, and even global crises?
Well, I think the Yoga Sutras are more relevant now than ever.
Okay.
They offer these timeless tools for cultivating inner peace and resilience, even amidst all the external chaos.
Yeah.
Take, for example, the teachings on the kleshas,
Okay.
those mental afflictions that we talked about earlier.
Right, those patterns of clinging and craving and aversion and fear that keep us stuck in suffering.
Exactly. By understanding these patterns,
Yeah.
we can start to loosen their grip on our minds
Okay.
and create space for greater clarity and equanimity.
So it's about recognizing those mental traps and developing strategies to break free from them.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the emphasis on mindfulness and present moment awareness, cultivating dharana,
Right.
can help us to stay grounded in the midst of all the overwhelm and distraction.
So it's about training the mind to focus on what's actually happening rather than getting lost in worries about the future or regrets about the past.
Exactly. And the ethical guidelines of the yamas and the niyamas can provide this compass for navigating complex ethical dilemmas and for living with greater integrity and compassion.
So instead of getting swept away by the tide of fear and reactivity,
Right.
we can use these teachings to cultivate inner strength, clarity, and ethical awareness.
Precisely. And ultimately, the Yoga Sutras point us back to our true nature, that source of peace and wisdom that resides within each of us.
It's like a reminder that our true essence is not defined by the chaos of the external world, but by that deep inner wellspring of awareness.
Exactly. And by connecting with that inner source, we can tap into this wellspring of resilience and strength that can help us navigate any challenge that life throws our way.
That's incredibly inspiring.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about your personal journey with the Yoga Sutras.
Yeah.
How have these teachings impacted your own life and understanding?
The Yoga Sutras have been more than just an intellectual pursuit for me.
Okay.
They've really provided this framework for understanding my own mind, for navigating my own challenges, and for cultivating a deeper sense of purpose and meaning in my life.
So it's not just about studying the words, but about embodying the teachings.
Exactly. The Yoga Sutras are not just this collection of ancient texts.
Right.
They're a living tradition, a path of transformation and liberation. And I encourage anyone seeking greater peace, happiness, and fulfillment to explore these teachings and discover their power for themselves.
That's a beautiful invitation.
Okay.
But before we wrap up,
Okay.
I have one final question for you.
Okay.
What is one piece of advice from the Yoga Sutras that you would offer to our listeners who are just beginning their exploration of these teachings?
That's a great question. If I were to offer one piece of advice, it would be to approach the Yoga Sutras with an open mind and a curious heart.
Okay.
Don't be intimidated by the ancient language or the philosophical concepts.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to be guided by the wisdom of the teachings and trust that they will reveal their truths to you in their own time.
That's wonderful advice. And I think it applies not just to the Yoga Sutras, but to any spiritual path that we might choose to explore.
Absolutely. It's about cultivating that spirit of inquiry, that willingness to learn and grow, and that trust in the wisdom that resides within each of us.
Yeah, so we're uncovering these layers of meaning. And with each layer, the Yoga Sutras become more relevant to our lives, not less.
Yeah, you put it perfectly. And one of the most fascinating things about the Yoga Sutras is how they weave together all of these seemingly disparate threads: ethics, psychology, cosmology, even those mind-bending cities,
Right.
into this unified tapestry of understanding.
Yeah, it's not just a philosophy textbook. It's a guide to living a more conscious, meaningful life,
Right.
even amidst the complexities of the modern world.
Exactly.
Speaking of which, Professor Bryant mentioned something interesting in his lecture about the historical context of the sutras.
Yeah.
They were written centuries ago in a vastly different world.
Right.
So how do we reconcile those ancient teachings with the realities of our lives?
It's a crucial point. I mean, we can't just, romanticize the past and pretend we're all living in ashrams meditating under mango trees.
Right, we can't just unplug from the matrix and live like hermits.
Right. Exactly.
So how do we make these teachings practical, applicable to our modern lives?
Well, it's about finding the essence of the core principles and then creatively adapting them to our current context.
Okay.
So, for example, the principle of ahimsa, non-harming, can extend beyond just our physical actions. We
Right.
can practice ahimsa in our speech, avoiding gossip or harsh words.
Yeah.
We can practice it in our thoughts, cultivating compassion instead of judgment.
Yeah.
We can even practice it in our digital interactions,
Yeah.
being mindful of how we use social media.
So it's like taking that yogic awareness and weaving it into the fabric of our daily lives, even in seemingly mundane activities.
Exactly. And the practice of pranayama, breath control, doesn't require a special cushion or a silent retreat.
Right.
You can practice it anywhere, anytime, on the subway, in a meeting, even during like a stressful conversation.
Okay.
Just a few conscious breaths can shift your energy, calm your nervous system, bring you back to the present moment.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these ancient practices can become relevant in a whole new way.
Yeah.
But what about those higher limbs, like pratyahara, withdrawing the senses,
Yeah.
and dharana, concentration? Those seem pretty challenging in our hyperstimulated world. We're constantly bombarded with information and distractions.
They are, no doubt. But even small steps can make a difference.
Okay,
Pratyahara is about consciously choosing where you direct your attention.
okay.
Maybe it's turning off your phone for an hour a day, or taking a walk in nature without your headphones, or simply noticing the sensations of your breath as you wash the dishes.
So it's about creating those little pockets of stillness,
Yeah.
those moments where we intentionally disengage from the external noise and reconnect with our inner world.
Exactly. And dharana concentration can be cultivated in so many ways.
Right.
It could be focusing on a single task without multitasking,
Okay.
reading a book without getting sidetracked by notifications,
Yeah.
or simply listening attentively to someone without interrupting or planning your response.
So it's about building those mental muscles, training the mind to stay present and focused,
Yeah,
even amidst the chaos.
exactly.
Okay, I love that. But let's be real. It's easy to get discouraged when we're trying to apply these teachings.
Sure.
And life throws us a curveball.
Of course.
So how do we stay motivated, especially when faced with like setbacks or challenges?
That's where abhyasa, consistent practice, and vairagya, non-attachment, come into play.
Yeah.
Remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
There will be ups and downs, moments of clarity and moments of confusion.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's not about achieving perfection,
Right.
but about showing up day after day, even when we don't feel like it.
So just keep practicing.
Exactly. And vairagya, non-attachment, reminds us that it's not about the outcomes, the successes or failures,
Right.
but about the process itself,
Okay.
the dedication to the path. We do the work, we offer our best effort, and then we let go of the need to control the results.
That's a powerful reminder, especially in a culture that's so obsessed with achievement and external validation.
It is. But let's shift gears for a moment.
Right.
Professor Bryant also emphasized this connection between yoga and Buddhism, suggesting that these two traditions can really enrich and inform each other.
Right.
So how do these paths kind of intersect, and where do they diverge?
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, they both emphasize meditation and mindfulness and liberation from suffering.
They do, but their approaches to those goals differ in these subtle yet profound ways.
So where do they overlap?
Well, both traditions recognize the power of the mind to create suffering.
Okay.
They both emphasize the importance of ethical conduct, of
Right.
cultivating compassion and wisdom.
Yeah.
And they both offer these practices for calming the mind and for cultivating deeper awareness.
Okay, so they share like a common foundation.
Right.
But where do they diverge?
One key difference lies in their understanding of the self.
Okay.
As we discussed, yoga affirms the existence of this eternal, unchanging self, the Atman.
Right.
Buddhism, on the other hand, teaches that the self is impermanent, a collection of constantly changing phenomena.
So it's like two different lenses for viewing reality. One emphasizing unity and permanence, the other emphasizing impermanence and change.
That's a great way to put it.
Hmm.
And those different perspectives lead to different understandings of liberation.
Okay.
So for yogis, liberation is about realizing the true nature of the self merging with the divine.
Yeah.
For Buddhists, liberation is about recognizing the illusory nature of the self and attaining the state of freedom from clinging and craving.
So it's like two different maps leading to potentially different destinations.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But I think there's also this sense in which these paths converge at a deeper level,
Okay.
the level where language and concepts kind of fall away.
Right.
Ultimately, both traditions are pointing us toward this profound transformation of consciousness,
Yeah.
an awakening to a reality that transcends our limited ego-driven perspectives.
That's beautiful. It's like we can appreciate the unique insights of each tradition while also recognizing the underlying unity that connects them.
Yeah, exactly.
And, as we've been talking, I've been thinking about how the Yoga Sutras, with their focus on stilling the mind and cultivating inner peace, could offer a powerful antidote to the anxieties and uncertainties that we're facing on a global scale.
I agree.
I mean, we're living in a time of climate change and social unrest and political polarization. It's easy to feel overwhelmed and helpless.
It is.
So could these teachings offer a path forward, not just individually, but collectively?
That's a profound question, and I think it goes to the heart of why the Yoga Sutras are so relevant today.
Right.
If we can learn to calm the storms within our own minds,
Right.
to cultivate compassion and wisdom within ourselves,
Right.
we might just be able to create this ripple effect that extends outward, influencing our families, our communities, and ultimately the world around us.
So inner transformation is not just about personal growth,
Right.
but about creating a more peaceful and just world.
Exactly. It's a powerful idea.
It is. And I think it's an idea that's gaining momentum.
I think so too.
More and more people are recognizing that the solutions to our global challenges aren't just technological or political,
Right.
but also spiritual and ethical.
Yeah.
We need to cultivate a different way of being in the world,
Yes.
a different way of relating to ourselves, to each other, and to the planet.
I agree.
And the Yoga Sutras, with their emphasis on self-awareness,
Yeah.
compassion, and interconnectedness,
Yeah.
they offer like a roadmap for that transformation.
They do.
Wow, this has been such an illuminating deep dive.
It has.
We've covered so much ground, from the historical context of the Yoga Sutras
Yeah.
to their practical application in our modern lives, from those mind-boggling cities to the subtle nuances of the guru-disciple relationship.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. But as we wrap up, I'm curious, what stands out to you as the most essential message of the Yoga Sutras?
Okay.
What's the one thing that you hope our listeners will take away from this conversation?
That's a great question. If I had to distill it down to one message, it would be this. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your circumstances.
Powerful.
At your core, you are pure awareness, pure consciousness. And that awareness is the source of your freedom, your joy, and your infinite potential.
Wow.
The Yoga Sutras offer this path to reconnect with that true nature, to liberate yourself from the limitations of the ego, and to awaken to the boundless possibilities of the present moment.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think it's a message that resonates deeply with all of us, regardless of our background or our beliefs.
I think so too.
We all long for that sense of freedom, that connection to something greater than ourselves.
Right.
And the Yoga Sutras, with their timeless wisdom and their practical guidance, offer a way to make that longing a reality.
They do. And one thing we didn't even get to explore is the concept of Ishvara in the Yoga Sutras.
Oh, right.
This kind of special consciousness that can guide you toward liberation. It's a fascinating glimpse into the devotional side of yoga.
Ooh, that's definitely something to ponder.
It is.
Seems like every answer in the Yoga Sutras leads to more fascinating questions.
It does, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
If you want to delve deeper, I highly recommend checking out Professor Bryant's translation and commentary. It's like having a personal guide to these ancient teachings. And who knows, maybe this deep dive has sparked a curiosity to explore your own inner world through the practice of yoga, or simply by paying more attention to the amazing phenomenon of your own consciousness. Until next time, happy exploring.